Okay.
I'm a writer. I think that's what I basically call myself. I'm a writer. I'm also an entertainment and pop culture journalist. And yeah, I'm also known as Jones Phoenix. I think when I initially started writing, I was known as a poet, so I called myself Jones Phoenix. So you could say, okay, that's my nickname. And growing up, of course, my childhood experiences were a mixture of good and not so good. I wouldn't say I had terrible childhood experiences, but let me say my childhood experiences were quite good. I I was born into a family that showed me love and attention and care. Let me say I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate to come from a family where both parents believe so much in education, believe so much in giving their children attention. As of worked for me as well as my brothers. I'm the first born of my family, I'm the first child. I have 4 younger brothers. We are 5 altogether. And yeah, I was born in Lagos. That was in 1998. And of course, growing up, my brother nursery school, I initially attended a school named that school. I think Bethsaida, something like that. Later, the school was renamed Council. And what nursery school experience do I remember? I remember one time like that. I think we went for an excursion of some sort like that. I think we went for an excursion. It was the first time. It was my first time going on an excursion. I went with my younger brother and then my immediate younger brother. We just enjoyed ourselves. We had fun. Primary school was also fun. I attended Empire International School. So some years ago, just a few years ago, I heard that the school is no longer in existence. I don't know what happened. But back then, I still remember the name of my headmaster, Mr. Omowa. He was assisted by Mr. Ogodo. And I think my mom is a teacher. Back then, she used to teach in the school I attended. Let me say, I'm a teacher who have this, they have this belief or this intention that once your mom or your dad is a teacher, that you don't have a choice but to excel academically. You don't have a choice but to succeed in academics. So, like, attention was on me. Like, I just had to. There was no way I was going to fail. And luckily for me, I wouldn't say luckily because I was quite serious. I think I was calm in primary school. I was quite reserved. Okay. I did well also academically. I normally did not come first. I think my position then for most part of primary school was third. I think I took third position most of the time. There was this particular girl in class. Her name is Tony Petienri. I still remember her name. Like, I don't know why I've not forgotten that girl's name. Tony Petienri. And since primary school we never met. If I see her today, I guess I should be able to recognize her face because I still have an idea of what her face looks like. So this girl always comes first in class. Like, always comes first in class. But there was a particular term in a class. I can't remember that class. I think maybe it was primary 2, go to primary 2 or primary 3. That class, in that term, I took first position. So like I was happy, I was excited because it was my first time taking first position in class at the end of the term. So and for me it was like I displaced our champion, Loa Tony Petienri. And I had my friends then. I was the quiet type, but I had some friends who were a bit troublesome and who talked a lot. So I remember we were going on one day, and my friends now started. It happened to be going on at the same time. She was going also with her friends, with her clique of friends. Then my clique of friends now started kind of taunting her. They're making, they're gloating, they're kind of, yes, our guy, that's that kind of thing. It was primary school though, but, we had that, that impression that we just wanted to show that, one of us, this guy has taken first position, that kind of thing. But I don't remember how she reacted. I think she didn't really take it serious. So, yeah. In primary school, I think I had double promotion once. We call it double promotion. I jumped a class. That class. My secondary school life started in year 2007. That was State High School, Alimocho. State High School, Alimocho, Lagos. It's a very popular school. I think secondary school life was the one that really exposed me to the world. I was still, even though it was public school, it was a state government run institution. It exposed me. I was still, I still maintained my good boy behavior. I've always been a good boy, and I think I still have. I still maintain my good boy behavior. I have some quite interesting experiences. But as a teenager, as a boy, you still, no matter how good you are, you still want to, the peer group influence and all that always coming through. So our classes were always crowded. Our classes were very crowded. In a class, I remember GSS1, I and J. I was in GSS1, I and J. Our classes, we were placed in our classes in accordance with our names, that's alphabetically. My surname, Adedayo, started with A. Okay? So imagine we now have, despite the fact that my name starts with A, I'm placed in GSS1, I and J. So that tells you or gives you an idea of how populated we were. So in the class, we had about 100 of us. I think over 100, not even about over 100 of us are certain of that day. Okay? So, and the classroom was small. And back then, I think Fashola was the governor of Lagos then. He was the one in power. And the chairs that we had, the government chairs that we had then were mostly for our seniors, those in senior classes. We junior students at that time did not have access to government chairs. So I had to, my parents had to make a chair for me. This locker, they call it locker. I don't know if it has a special name. So, because I was just getting, I was getting into secondary school life. I was just trying to get used to secondary school life. I didn't know that there's some things. Secondary school just taught me that I had to be smart enough. I had to be wise. I had to be smart. Because after my parents made that chair for me, they got me a chain with what's it called? Padlock, such that at the close of every school lesson, I could always chain my chairs to other chairs in the classroom. But before our seniors then, despite the fact that I always chained my bed, I got to class one day and just discovered that the chain had been removed. My chair was nowhere to be found. Because our seniors back then would come to junior classes. Those who had damaged their own chairs and tables, they would come to junior school. We would take our own chairs, our own lockers. Okay, they would take it, they steal them. So from that point, I had to spot, right, to write in classes. I had to spot to write notes, and I wasn't this note writing type, even though I was a serious student to an extent, but I didn't like writing too long notes. I just got bored when it comes to writing notes. I got bored, and there were particular subjects I actually hated. I did not like subjects like the basic tech. Then we called it introductory technology. I think for that subject in particular, I barely had any reasonable notes in that subject. Especially when I was in JSS1. Okay. So I remember an experience. I remember a particular day, the teacher in charge, whose name I don't remember, was teaching. Then she gave notes. I pretended to be writing. Because I was sporting, I had a kind of book with me. I pretended to be writing. But the teacher, along the way, understood that I was not writing. That I was only playing a trick on him, or playing a trick on her. So she just called my name and said, this boy, let me see what you've been writing all along. And then she discovered my secret that I was not writing. I can't remember what happened, how it all ended, but I think she she must have punished me in some way, in one way or the other. Then I cannot forget my class teacher in junior secondary school, Madam President. Now GSS1, GSS2, and I think to an extent GSS3. She was one of those who shaped my life early on. Was one of those who shaped my life. One of the earliest people I can remember that I've had an influence or an impact in my life, Madam President. She taught us French. She was our French teacher, was our class teacher, but she was a very disciplined person. So even though I wasn't much of the note writing side, she recognized me as a student who, to an extent, was committed to studies. Okay? And she tried her best to always redirect me along the right path whenever I strayed away. In fact, she got acquainted with my parents, my mom then. She knew my mom. So whenever it was open day, she would say, this Adedayo. She called me Adedayo. She said, Adedayo is not doing this, Adedayo is not doing that. His notes are not complete. Like, there was a day, that woman, she contributed a lot to my life, like in junior secondary school, because I imagine that if she had not shaped me in some way, there were probably a lot of, negative things I would have gotten myself involved in junior secondary school, despite being a naive person. Okay. So whenever I did not write my notes and reports got to her, she would find a way to discipline me. I remember she gave an assignment in one of our French classes. I think I did not do that assignment. So I don't know how she found out that I did not. I wasn't the only one who didn't do the assignment. Some of my mates also did not do the assignment. Then she now asked us to stay in the sun. She asked us to stay in the sun. Like, she punished us that day. She asked us to stay in the sun. As little as we were, we had one kind of funny mindset. I don't know if we believed that because she just left us in the sun for some hours, we thought she had forgotten. And there was something we did. We plucked one of these hairs, one of our eyelashes or eyelids. We moved a strand, and put it on our head. I don't know why we had that kind of mentality back then, but we had the impression that if we had done that thing, that thing we did was what made her forget about punishment. Mind you, towards the end of closing her, she remembered that she came to us and said, okay, this is your punishment. Now, get a notebook, right? I will always do my assignments. I will always do my assignment from the first page to the last page. I think that is the most ridiculous punishment I've ever got in the secondary school. Like, that night I did not sleep. I got, was it 22A or 40 leaves? I had to write it. I stayed up all through the night. I had to write it because, let me say, they don't bomb me well. Make I don't write that thing. Madam Sidame, I just had to write it. Next morning I submitted it. Now forgive us and all that. So that was it for junior secondary. Then senior secondary school was also fine for me. I think I had a wonderful experience. My favorite teacher back then, senior secondary school, was this particular woman. I cannot remember her name, but I think it's Ido, Mrs. Ido. Yeah, I think so. She was our literature teacher, and she taught us in SS3. She was one of those also who kind of made me interested in literature. Well, let me say, who kind of furthered my interest in literature. Before that time, I was already writing. I've been writing since I was about, I think, as far back as 9 years. I don't know if I wrote earlier than that, but I remember writing from the age of 9. Yes. That was in GSS1. I've been writing since that time. Okay? I would write short stories, like I would give them to my friends in class. At some point I would sell some of those stories. Like I would some of my short stories for maybe 10 naira, 20 naira, we were looking to them there. So that was what he said. I was saying at some point my younger brother, would assist me. I would give some of my stories to him. I'll give him some of my stories, and he will help me, sell to some of his friends around for 20 naira, 10 naira. We just saw it as a way of fun. I love writing them and write short stories. Okay, so I think when I tell people that I attended a government school, like public school, they find it difficult to believe because of my personality. They will be like, government school, no, it can't be so. I attended a private school. And I think it's just because of the way I conduct myself. In university, I was one of I don't like hyping myself, but to be frank, I think I was one of the top students in class. Now in my days, I was one of the top students, and 100 level was because I at the end of 100 level, I was on first class. So due to that, my good grades, I became very popular in class. So everybody called me Jones. I was called Jones throughout secondary school. Jones. And for me, it was a good feeling, But the concern that comes with that kind of feeling is people will always expect you to perform up to expectations. They expect that you don't let them down. They expect you to be consistent. I made friends with a number of my lecturers. My lecturers liked me. I was good. I had some interesting moments in the department. So I wasn't, even though I was more of an academic person, but outside academics, at least I tried to get a social life for myself. I was a member of, at some point, I think that was in 200 level. I was a member of National Association of Students of English and Literary Studies, last chapter. More like our departmental association. So at first I was the treasurer first year. The year after, I was general secretary. Okay. So I had a taste of politics, school politics. And it was a wonderful experience for me. I also attended, there's this conference, it's called ICOSOS, which stands for International Conference of Students of English and Literary Studies. So it's more like a coming together of all interested students of English, and literature across Nigerian universities. So I attended 2 editions of that event. The first edition was held in Unilag. The second edition was held in Owerri. That's I think IMSU, Imo State University. So I attended both editions. It was fun because it was a week-long program. And I remember that was in the second edition, I performed one of my poems there. I read out one of my poems. So it was a competition, but I did not win anything. There were better performers there than me, but I just read my piece. At least I was grateful. And I was happy with the fact that I was recognized, and my department, the association actually was impressed that I was able to represent last at that event. So, life in university, right? Those are some of the memories I had. I had wonderful friends also. I can't forget my roommates. I think at this point, it's just best I take a shout out to my roommates there. Gabriel, Nimiwe, Osu Davis. They are still my friends. They are still together. They're my roommates there, and my roommates also had profound positive influence on my life, because I learned a lot of things from them. I learned about relationship. I wasn't much of the relationship person. I wasn't much of. So I had to be frank, I had girlfriends. I had a girlfriend. Or what some people call situationship, because we don't really define relationship like girlfriend, but I had girlfriend in university. But through my friends, my 2 friends were more. One of them is more exposed, he's more vocal. The other one is a bit reserved, but he's very mature. Okay, so they shaped me. Living with them actually positively influenced me. How to relate with people, how to talk to a girl, that kind of thing. I wasn't much into women stuff, but definitely I had feelings, and there were times I, vibe along with a few girls, but I wasn't too much of a dating person. My friends, one of them in particular was not even one of them, the two of them, they like girls. They like girls, so a bit of that, they kind of impacted me. I wouldn't call it negative influence because it's one of the things that it's one of those things about youth life. So they influenced me in that regard. And the most important thing was the fact that they were also people, despite the fact that they also had their own flaws, which of course every human has. There were people who inspired me academically. They were also academically focused. Okay? So it wasn't just about, they were not the party types. It wasn't just about, emotions or about relationships or about real life, but even in the academics, they inspired me. So, and we had a wonderful time together throughout 4 years. We stayed for about 3 years because before joining them, I lived somewhere else. So we had a wonderful time together. And I think that was it. So, university, I think I emerged as, because our department was this department of English. And there are two factions in that department. Should I use the word faction? Faction sounds negative. So let's say there are two disciplines or two aspects. There is literature, there is language. Both under the umbrella of the Department of English. So I was in literature. In the literature part, I think I emerged the best graduating student to the glory of God. I didn't come out with the first class, second class upper. I'm happy with it. But the best graduating student in language, who happened to be the overall best, had a first class, which was impressive. Okay, so that's it for me for my university experience. Initially, I started as that was like I said 9 years. I started writing just short stories, fun stories. I didn't really have it in mind to take writing as a career. I just saw writing as something I wanted to do, something I just had a passion for. That was how I started. At some point, I kind of experienced a shift. I think that should be around JS1. I wrote some few plays. I wanted to do more plays, so I kind of started writing some few short plays. And by the time I was in SS3, then I became drawn towards poetry. So let me say, in my writing career, I've kind of tried out different things. So I became fascinated with poetry in 2013, and that was when I wrote my very first poem. The title is Inevitable. I think it's Inevitable Death. I still remember some lines there. Let me give you. Oh, death, the inevitable. The Stygian-looking monster, whom we mourn against, for thy icy hands still them. Nobles will cast thee, destitute will spank thee, relatives will round still, but thy icy hands still them. Okay, I can't remember the last stanza, but those are the first two stanzas. It's a short poem, and it was, for me, it was just my starting point. So from then, I just started writing poems. I had a book then. In that book, I would just keep writing. I wasn't a performance poet, so to say. I wasn't a spoken word artist. So I've performed spoken word once. I did spoken word once in church. I was more into writing poems just for the fun of it. And then I wasn't really, I think then, I didn't really have it in mind that I wanted to make poetry a career. Okay? I was just putting out my words. Then, what now further encouraged me was the fact that I happened to be on Facebook. That was after secondary school life. I think that should be around 2014, 15, when I became very active on Facebook. Then I started seeing some works of people that I admired. People were posting their poems. I think that period happened to be a time when Facebook poetry. Should I say Facebook poetry? We had so many poets who were just sharing their works on Facebook. The likes of Stephen Sylvester, Ayato, Michael Ace. Is it Ace or As? Okay, Ace, yeah. We had Adedayo. We had we had John Chizoba, Vincent. There are many others like that. We had A.E. Kowochio. She was one of my favorite poets. A.E. Kowochio. um, I'm not sure I pronounce that way, Are Joshua Omotayo. Those were poets that I admired. Like I would just, once I stumble on their work on Facebook, I would just be mesmerized. And around that period, we also had J.D. Badmus. Yes, J.D. Badmus was also one of the poets I admired. Around that period, there were some competitions. We had some, poets associations were coming up with competitions to engage poets, enthusiasts of poets, and I started writing, applying for some of these competitions, submitting some of my poems back there. I was writing, but I wasn't so lucky. Obviously, I've not been so lucky when it comes to having too many of my poems out there. But at least I know I have some of my works. One of my poems is from Michael Ace published one of my poems. I have a poem in Writers Space Africa. I published a poem in one of their platforms there. Then I'm trying to remember this one. Words, Rhymes, and Readings. I also, one of my poems on that platform. I wrote a poem on bedbug on that platform. And I think maybe one or two others like that. But most of my poems were just on Facebook. I was just, I loved the fact that I was being commended. Okay, you put a poem, you post your poem on Facebook, and people react to it and say, oh wow, that poem is nice, this poem is great, I love this, people commend me. That kept me going at that time. I wasn't really seeing poetry as an avenue for financial opportunities. And I think the poets at that period who saw it, who tapped into that opportunity, who saw it as an avenue for financial opportunities were really smart. And quite a number of them made it. So I didn't look at it that way, I was just being for the fun of it. So I had a few of my books published. On some digital platforms. Yeah, then I think I had a friend. We are still friends anyway. His name is Michael Aromolaro. So he was my we were friends from the Department of English. He's one of those who inspired me to write more prose. He was one of those who drew my attention to prose writing than poetry. Not that anything was wrong with poetry, but I read some of his works when I got to university, when we, became acquaintances in university and all that. So it was around that time, I think that should be around maybe 2018. It was around 2018 or 2019 that I became familiar with him, okay, that we became friends, sort of. And I was following some of his writings. I was impressed by his style of writing, the way he writes, the way he communicates through his pieces, prose form. And prior to that period, I wasn't really a prose person. I was more of, Facebook poems, and having my poems published. I'm going to try writing prose. Why not write more prose than poetry? I think the impression that he had then, and I must be frank, I think it's the truth. Though not everyone will agree with me, but I believe it. Poetry is, I see poetry as an elitist art. It's elitist in the sense that not everyone connects with poetry, and not everyone likes poetry. Okay? So as a poet, if you must be outstanding, you need to give something extra. There must be something special about your work that will always make people want to go back, connect with it, and all that. Okay. And this is not, prose on the other hand is something that everyone connects with because of its free-flowing continuous form. So long as your prose writing is understandable, you express yourself in correct English, it's just a matter of time. You will gain your own audience. Not everyone will fall in love with your style of writing, but definitely you have your audience. So that was how I got drawn towards prose. And with time, I just found myself gravitating towards, the entertainment style prose writing. I found myself gravitating towards, film. I became more interested in writing about films, talking about movies, particularly reviews. So I had one of the earliest reviews I wrote, was Citation. The movie is produced by Kole Afolayan, directed by Kole Afolayan. That was in 2020. Yes, 2020. Citation, yes. I think it was one of the earliest reviews I wrote. But before then, I wrote some reviews, but it was one of the major reviews I wrote then. And then I just published it on Medium. Medium. And let me say, it garnered some public, like I had some positive feedback from that because for me, the way when it comes to, I am so much interested in African films in particular. African films and to an extent music, but I'm more of a film person than music. So I love the fact that for me, African films, I've not watched too many films from different parts of Africa, but I think I've seen a few South African movies, and mostly I'm more of a Nollywood person. But I wanted to connect more with African films. Number one, because I'm essentially African. I'm a Nigerian. So I feel, of course, since my worldview is basically African, that it's something that I should gravitate towards. Secondly, I also feel that African films are, in the world at large, I feel that African films are still undervalued. They are not, we are not there yet, as far as, for instance, Nollywood is concerned. Nollywood is the biggest film industry in Africa, for crying out loud. And even at that, we are not there yet. Okay, so African films are still undervalued. So, through my writings, I feel inspired, or I feel that I should write about films, African films. I should promote our films. That through some of the writings I do, through my criticisms and all that, I am lending a voice, a global voice to African films. I am propagating African films to the world. So for me, that's the kind of mentality that guides me, or that that motivates me whenever I write about African films. Okay, whenever I write about films, whenever I do my reviews and all that. So my very first review was Citation in 2020, like my first major review, and I got positive feedback from some of my friends, and that just kept me going. I think afterwards I wrote a review on King of Boys. King of Boys. I also got a lot of positive feedback. So I just kept on going. Because it's quite, let me say, it's quite, should I use the word pathetic, that some people, some Africans, Nigerians for instance, do not buy Nollywood films. They are not into Nollywood productions because they feel that Nollywood movies are of low value. Okay, they're of low value, they're of low impact. There are lots of mistakes there, there are lots of inconsistencies, and all. Of course, I agree with them to a large extent, but I see Nollywood as, for me, my relationship with Nollywood films is like that of a parent and a child. Okay, if you have a child who is obstinate, who is aberrant, who is rebellious, you would always want to consider this person this is still my child. So no matter what he or she does, no matter how you scold him, you still want to draw him or her closer. You still want to, show that fatherly or motherly love, because he or she is your child. You just need to keep trying to shape the life of that child. So for me, that's what my relationship with Nollywood. That's the way I see it. I see it as a father, a familial relationship. Nollywood is part of us because definitely it's a reflection of our lives as Nigerians. African films are a reflection of African identity. So I feel that as an African, as a Nigerian, you should first of all appreciate your identity. You should appreciate your cultural product. Even if there are problems with it, even if there are issues with it, it's fine. You can compare Nollywood and say, okay, Hollywood does this, they do that. Hollywood productions are super. They are better than. It's fine. You can make comparisons. There's nothing wrong in that. But you should also always see the need to appreciate our domestic films by watching them, by talking about them, pointing out the positives, the negatives, by lending your voice to such cultural products. So for me, that's the way I see Nollywood. So at times I get, should I say I get a I just, when I hear people say that, when I hear Nigerians, friends, people around me, acquaintances say that they don't like watching or they don't watch Nollywood films, I'll be like, so why would I feel like, okay, you watch Korean movies, or you watch maybe Indian movies, you watch Hollywood, then why don't you watch Nollywood? So African films, I like them a lot. I appreciate African films. Of course, there are, you know, there are problems, or let me say there are issues with some of these movies, but definitely, as a critic, as a writer, I make it a point of duty to watch, sieve out the good, identify the encouraging parts of these productions, and also look at ways or gaps, places where they need to improve. So for me, it's just something that I like. That has since 2020. Before then, I've been doing some stuff, but since 2020, I've just been into writing about the entertainment industry, writing about pop culture, most especially African. Okay, and okay, I have some of my pieces, some of my articles. Most of my articles are actually published on Culture Custodian because that is the media I work for. Culture Custodian is an entertainment media, so that's the media I work for at the moment. And of course, you have most of my pieces there. But I have a few of my pieces on Bella Nigeria. Okay, and I think I also published, one or two of my pieces on Queen some years back. So this is my philosophy. That's my philosophy of writing. I hope recently I read a book. It's a book that captures the statecraft of Burna Boy, written by Adedayo. After reading the book, I just had that interest. That interest just developed from within me. I just felt like, okay, that someday I'm also going to write books that are based on African films. So it's one of the projects, one of those things I intend to do in the long run. Write about publish books that focus on Nollywood, books that one of my favorite Nollywood critics, happens to be a white man. His name is Jonathan Ames. Yeah, I think I've read about maybe one or two of his books. Yeah. And in his works, you've seen talk about, mostly it captures, what it does is like a historical background of African, some Nollywood things. It focuses on Nollywood. It looks at, captures Nollywood, and is very enthusiastic about a version of Nollywood known as New Nollywood. New Nollywood productions. New Nollywood productions are Nollywood films in particular that specialize, that are known for their high budgets. They are known for their high budgets. They are known for their sophisticated gadgets or equipment. Okay, so when you watch a new Nollywood film, for instance, Far From Home or any of the Tony Afolayan's movies, you always see that cinematographic quality there. There's always, the cinematography is always top notch to a large extent. You always see that time, that commitment to cinematography. You always see the fact that, okay, they are more intentional about what they are dishing out to the public. Like I said earlier, Nollywood is not perfect. Of course, it's my duty to identify the inconsistencies and always give recommendations on what to improve. Okay, my favorites. Let me just talk about my favorite filmmakers in the industry. My favorite filmmakers in the industry, like for me, I rate Tunde Kilani as number one. For me, I consider him as the father of modern Nollywood filmmaking. For me, it's a personal thing. I see him as, he's a cinematographer, he's a director, he's one of those I respect a lot. So for me, he's like the foremost Hollywood filmmaker at the present. I also like Daddy Osuberu, I like Biodu Steven, and only Afolayan also does it, but to an extent, Niyi Akimolayan is also one of the filmmakers I appreciate. Then there's one other person I'm trying to remember. Okay, yeah. Then there is Funke Akindele. I wouldn't call her. She's not. She's not. Let me say, her filmmaking, or let me say, her filmmaking career. Apart from the fact that she's well known as an actress, her filmmaking career is relatively recent compared to some of these top guys that have been in the industry for several years. But nonetheless, some of the few films she has released has actually proven that she's really worth it. She's worth it. She's up there. At the moment, she has the movie. She is the producer of the movie with the highest grossing income of all time, which is Battle on Booker Street. She has always been a big budget person, and her movies usually yield a lot of financial returns, and they do well in commercial space. So she has always championed movies that are commercial box office successes. You can talk about Omogeto, Jennifer. I think that's the Return of Jennifer, and so on. So, okay, in the next 5 to 10 years, I'm not all these 5 to 10 years questions. I find them quite funny because I just feel that okay, in the future, this is what I intend to do. But having a specific time like 5 years, 10 years, I don't really buy into it. But all the same, while I'm going about, I want to be one of the biggest film journalists in Africa as a whole, not just Nigeria. Beyond that, I intend to venture into filmmaking, particularly directing and cinematography. Interested in directing, cinematography. So those are some of the things I want to explore. Okay, because I feel that as a film critic or as a film journalist, that you shouldn't just be aware of the theory part. You shouldn't just be conversant with the theory, but you should be pragmatic in your approach. Okay, if you should know how to use the camera, for instance, you should know how to set up, you should know how to do all of those things that many of these technical sales guys do on set. So it's not just about you saying the lighting is not good, the camera quality is bad, you could have used so and so in this production, the position, the director did not. No, it's not just about you critiquing such things, but also having that technical know-how. And for me, that's where I see myself. So I see myself as a filmmaker, director, cinematographer, in addition to film journalism. And also, I see myself as a writer. At least one of works on Nollywood. So I want to write about Nollywood, no Nollywood in particular. So these are the things. Then, as a pop culture critic, as a pop culture enthusiast, there are some stories that I intend to document, in video form, YouTube. I feel that there are certain traditions that have not been really exposed. There are certain elements of culture that still, some stories that are hidden, that still need to be told. The other day, some time ago, I was in Badagry, just recently anyway. I was in Badagry with a friend. I spent the night. He happens to be the prince of one of their rulers. And while having a conversation with some of his brothers, they mentioned certain figures, certain people that are considered, that have been deified. They are considered as legends in that part of this thing. And these people are not figures that are well known outside that region. So I feel, okay, why not do a documentary about some of these traditional figures or elements that you have in such places that are hidden, that are not known to the outside world. So it's one of those things. I look forward to documenting tradition, that is yet to be known beyond that region. And also I also intend to run I have my YouTube channel now. I'm trying to set up my YouTube channel such that I want to conduct interviews with industry experts and professionals, filmmakers, film actors, learn from their experiences and all of that. So these are the things I plan to do in the next 5 to 10 years. But like we say, it's a step at a time. Too many projects, we just need to take it one by one. Take them one by one. Well, I will just tell my audience that they should keep looking out for me, definitely, because every, not just a writer, every artist, every artist um, deserves the backing of an audience. So without the audience, there is no artist, because you need someone to see. Forget about this. So some people will tell you that they are not looking forward. They don't look at what people say, or they don't expect. They just keep. Some people feel okay if they keep doing what they do. They are not concerned about the reactions of people. It's a lie. Everybody loves positive feedback. Everybody loves to be on the spotlight, even though not necessarily out there, but at least everyone loves being appreciated for what they do. So I'm appreciating everyone who has at any point in time read my work. Like, I'll just urge you to keep looking out for me. I'll just keep doing what I can. Okay? So that's it.